Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this penultimate discussion on SMEs, Gateway to Localization is the title of our presentations here. Now, we will start with the presentations and discussions from our distinguished panelists and speakers. From my left, and from the left, and then followed by Ms. Roshika, then finally with Linar Yakupov. Now, first things first. In the earlier discussions today, the main points and topics focused mainly on the SMEs. It started this morning with the ministerial dialogue, where the title of the presentations dwelled on building resilient SMEs for sustainable growth. It was followed by building an SME for regional ecosystem. Then the third panel discussions dwell with e-commerce and SMC development. Then the last, before this final discussion of localization, is the SMEs and internationalization. All of these are related to the real importance and role of the SMEs in the economic and sustainability or growth of a nation. Now, we will start with the presentations, and before that, let me just give some inputs on what localization process would mean before we go to the presentations in the context of those definitions that we have on hand. SME localization is the process of engaging small entrepreneurs in adapting a product or content to fit specific target market regardless of language, culture, or location. Localization also is the way of integrating and promoting the concept of clustering and value chain network for SMEs in specific locations. It is also a concept of localized SMEs that somewhat has been proven beneficial. A clustered SMEs can market their production at a national or international level. Now, SMEs, as mentioned, maybe in the total context of all the discussions today, has played and is playing a crucial role in the economic and industrial development of the country. For instance, the contribution of SMEs to GDP is generally significant. As you very well all know, it's about 30 to 35% of GDP. And the contribution of SMEs to export is between 19 to 31%. In the context of ASEAN, SMEs are the largest source of domestic employment across all economic sectors, and this goes even beyond ASEAN. In many states outside ASEAN, it may be ranging from 50 to 95%. SMEs development in ASEAN varies according to size and assets. SMEs are a vital part of the business supply chain, providing parts and services to larger companies. Now, we will begin with the presentation from Mr. Datuk Mohd Radzif Mohd Yunus, Group Managing Director, Small Medium Enterprises Development Bank, followed by Roshika Singh, IFC SME Consultant, FIG Advisory Services, South Asia Advisory Board Member, Fifth State Republic of India, and last but not the least, from Linar Yakupov, President of Regional Investment Agencies, Russian Federation. Thereafter, we will have questions that will be thrown to the different panelists, and the audience is free to interact as we get along the discussions. May you please start, Mr. Datuk?
Thank you, Bobby. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good evening to all. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this auspicious World Islamic Economic Forum 2015. Now, I think what I'll do is, I think Bobby has given an overview with regards to what localization is all about. But I guess this is quite a challenging topic, if you ask me, given the fact that I think localization can mean many things to many people. The way that I think I've crafted this whole presentation is to look at how SMEs and its supply chain can actually help in terms of localizing. And this is talking about the context of immersion, immersion of all SME products within the context of MNCs, i.e., if you look at Malaysia, for instance, as a source, 40% of inputs from domestic firms is immersed within the context of MNCs, compared to 46% in Vietnam and 82% in the People's Republic of China. Let me give you a quick glance first with regards to SMEs. I think Bobby has spoken about this, how important SMEs is, its contribution to global GDP about 50%, employment of about 60%. And then if you take through with regards to ASEAN, you're talking about 2.5 trillion in terms of combined GDP, sixth largest economy, and of course 630 million population. And going down further, SME profiles in Malaysia, 98% of establishments of SMEs in 2014, contribution to GDP is about 36%, 65% of employment, 20% of export. I presume if you've gone through the whole day session, you would have heard all these statistics. Taking the stage further, we're talking about SME stages of growth. We have startups, we have growth and mature in various industries. And I think if you look at the context of ideation right up to the harvesting context, you're talking about growth companies need to be nurtured continuously so as to move them up to the next level. And for them to remain relevant, the business ecosystem must be conducive to sustain the levels of efficiency and competitiveness and productivity. So let me now go back to this issue of building up the domestic supply chain in order for SMEs to fester and to support the MNCs, i.e. with regards to the context of localization. To build that conducive business environment, the whole ecosystem must support its entities and strengthen their relationships. And to complement the varying levels of needs through outsourcing, the need to be the element of a lower, products must be produced at a lower opportunity cost versus that of the competitors. And it must also have the competitive advantage, which means it represents better advantage versus competitors in the areas of low cost structure, low cost of labor, as well as access to raw materials. And I think by boosting domestic supply chain capacity, countries will be less reliant on imports and able to boost the potential for exports. So reliance on domestic SMEs then could also improve the competitive and comparative advantage of MNCs, as well as other local export-oriented corporations. So in a sense, what we're trying to do, and if you take a look at basically, for instance, like Mercedes-Benz, if they come in here, they set up production here, the whole intent is to see whether they can actually take on the local component parts to actually be able to be immersed within the context of what Mercedes-Benz has got to offer. So that's the context of immersion, that's the context of localization, as compared to perhaps the other context of localization, which is, if some of you have gone to, say for instance, Indonesia, if you look at the KFC that's been presented to you, if you go into KFC outlets, you find that it is actually catered towards the local flavor. I think that's the other context of localization. So the ones that we are talking about here is more on the context of immersion. And anchor companies and suppliers would form mutually reinforcing clusters of activity where prosperity of one reinforces the other. So again, the overall intent here is to increase the immersion of local SMEs in the MNC's ecosystem as a conduit towards the global market. So you're increasing that capacity for local SMEs to partake within the production line of all the end product of the MNCs, so that at least there's proper immersion of local components within the end product of the MNCs. So some of the key drivers for SMEs to respond to MNCs or anchor companies' expectation is cost and efficiency, services and quality and innovation. You're talking about automation, mechanization, innovation and digitization to enhance productivity and quality. You're talking about revenue drivers in terms of innovation, benefits of co-location of R&D and supply chain, stronger branding, perception of better quality. And I think in short, it is reliability, quality, as well as cost advantage. Ultimately, it will really add tangible value to MNCs to take the SMEs to support the end product. So some of the capacity initiatives that can be undertaken to build SMEs to support this so-called ecosystem is to look at how we can actually protect intellectual property, and to promote industrial standardization and certification vis-a-vis about best in class, encourage collaborative investment in terms of R&D, and of course support business in areas where supply chain is weak. We have to monitor the gaps and offer incentives to fulfill the business, monitor gaps and offer incentives to business to fill in the gaps, as well as incentives to the uptake of science, technology, engineering, and math-based degrees in jobs. I think, for example, what Singapore has done, the government has come in to actually pay for engineers who are actually looking at ways of improving the supply chain for local SMEs to partake within the context of MNCs. Again, the increase in terms of R&D spending. So in Malaysia, I think what has been undertaken is, and the way to do this is basically what we call the vendor development program. This is looking at the enhancement of both lateral and vertical integration and vendor development program, value adding, deepening, as well as broadening scope, ensuring productivity and competitiveness. The whole context here is basically to ensure that we have an ecosystem that supports the SMEs, with the MNCs being the vendor, being the anchor company that supports this so-called SME ecosystem. And there'll be financing support, technical support, R&D support that's been given by related agencies within the framework of what government can actually provide. And then, of course, in conclusion, if I may, how governments can actually help build capacity through the localization of the supply chain to support MNCs. We are talking about the enhanced capacities and capabilities, as well as the initiatives to make sure that the success of the domestic supply chain, talking about mergers and acquisition to actually have a scale, talking about enhancing competitiveness in outsourcing, enhancing capabilities in R&D, and undertaking synergistic collaborations. And I think some of the other things that I think has been done is basically to develop standards to be in line with the best in class and ensure that there's adequate policy space within the framework of policies, upgrading the capacity and innovative capabilities of companies, as well as enhancing value creation to human capital development. All this is basically the structural, if you like, the structure to support the context of building an SME ecosystem towards localization to support the MNCs. So there'll be greater immersion with regards to local components and local products produced by MNCs, as produced by local SMEs into the product chain of MNCs, which ultimately will lead towards perhaps the globalization of the so-called products that's been done by the SMEs. I think that's where I'll end, Bobby. I think I've taken more than the time, so probably I'll just pass it back to you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Radzif. Anyway, we were in our earlier huddle at the back. We gave Mr. Radzif enough time for his presentation. That's why he went out beyond his time. Now, may we hear statements and presentation from Ms. Roshika Singh?
Okay, good afternoon. I will just keep my statement quite brief and informal and hopefully allow a little bit more time for discussion. As we've heard, really, I think throughout the day, the importance of SMEs, I think we all have sort of understood that, and even seeing the amount of you here on the last shift is encouraging to see that this is an important issue for all of us here. So why do we at the IFC and the Fifth Estate, which is an advisory board that I sit on for a social incubation group as well, why do we look at SMEs? Really in terms of job creation and growth in an economy, we really see SMEs as being a critical area for that. We look at increasing access to finance to SMEs. I think SMEs struggle with that, and we've heard a little bit throughout the day about some of the challenges around access to finance. We found that across the globe, IFC did a study about a year and a half ago. We found more or less 90% of SMEs were still getting credit from informal sources. Working with banks, working with NBFCs is an area that we look to increase awareness and look at creating innovative products and services, as well as working with entrepreneurs themselves. We work a lot with creating entrepreneurship programs, financial awareness and literacy training as well, and work hand in hand with other donors to do that. I think in terms of some of the initiatives that we have at the IFC, we have the SME Finance Forum, which was created in 2012. It was established by the G20, and we have the next meeting coming up in Turkey in 2 weeks. It's really a example of bringing together practitioners, donors, technology providers to spur innovation, to raise awareness, and see how we can collaborate together, as well as work with entrepreneurs themselves. I work in India, so in terms of India, SMEs are critically important, like many other countries in the world. I think we heard this morning from the gentleman from Rwanda that they make up close to 80% of their economy. In India, they are a significant area, and we estimate about 30 million SMEs that employ over 70 million people. So it's a critical area for us to be engaging in and supporting. We also find that formal finance sources in India cater to only 22% of them. So it's a huge gap, it's a huge opportunity for the financial community, and as well from a social responsibility area. It's somewhere that we'd like to see more engagement in and see how we can encourage that. We held a sort of large research group about 2 years ago and created a report in India looking at this area. We met entrepreneurs across the country and found the top reasons that they saw as impediments or constraints to their growth. That included inadequate market linkages, lack of infrastructure in a country like India where basic infrastructure, power, water are huge issues. We found that SMEs were really struggling with additional costs around this. And we found inadequate finance, lack of what they called managerial competence or business skills being a huge, huge issue. And when we asked entrepreneurs, what do you want first, that came out as much as, if not more than, access to finance. And also obsolete technology, lack of awareness of technology, lack of understanding, confidence around being able to approach technology and leverage it, really. So what we have been doing over the past year or two is really working with a lot of the banks, our investee partners, in creating non-financial services for entrepreneurs. And we've done this in close to 10, 12 countries around the world, where we work with banks on creating programs that bundle assistance as well as financial products and services. So that could include a mentoring program, a networking program, a portal, the SME toolkit. These are all ideas that have been very well received and we see are starting to make a difference in the markets we work in. We also work with policymakers in India. We do have the government creating credit guarantee schemes, working with the Small Industries Bank, SIDBI, on creating a large guarantee scheme to absorb some of the risk associated with lending to SMEs and bring in financial institutions. We're working with credit bureaus, looking to strengthen credit information out there, promoting movables, financing, factoring, because again, collateral issues, particularly with the women entrepreneurs in India, remains a huge issue, an area to address. And really now, I think increasingly we are starting to link a little bit with large corporates and MNCs, and this has happened not so much by choice. It's sort of we've stumbled into these discussions and these arrangements. And just two examples that I can share with you that of recent potential partners that we're looking at working with are Walmart and Snapdeal. Snapdeal in India is similar to Amazon. It's an e-commerce group. And what they have done is they've brought SMEs into their supply chain. What are the reasons for this? They said it helps build with the community acceptance and involvement, so they're very keen to do that. They find that SMEs can actually work quicker, better, faster in terms of supplying what they need. They're more flexible than some of the traditional suppliers, and they can be key innovators. So while there is a social responsibility, this linkage with SMEs is not under the CSR programs. This makes business sense to them. I think a lot of the SMEs that we talk to and work with also mention that they want to be commercially viable. So they're not looking for handouts, they're looking to build skills, get market linkages, and be viable. Snapdeal as well has pulled together an empaneled group of advisors from anywhere registering their businesses, help with taxes, help with building some of the financial history to be able to help them obtain credit, and now is linking with one of the largest commercial banks in India as well, so that if they are in the Snapdeal SME chain, they have some sort of an endorsement of being bankable to a commercial bank that may not have traditionally lent to them. There are a few more examples, but I think perhaps in the interest of time and having time for discussion, I'll stop there and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roshika. And now for the final statement or presentation from Mr. Linar of the Regional Investment Agency of the Russian Federation. Mr. Linar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And very good afternoon to all of you. I'm glad many of you made it for our session. And actually, I'm representing Association of Regional Investment Agencies of Russian Federation. There are 83 states or regions, so-called, in Russia, and most of them, they have their regional investment development or investment promotion agencies or development corporations. These are our members, and we are the coordinating body for these entities. Now, many things in our countries are done in order to accommodate foreign investors coming into our countries. At the plenary session this morning, we were listening to a presentation of our brothers and ministers who were talking about how attractive their country is, and they welcome all the investors. And unfortunately, in most of our countries, paying so much attention to foreign investors or large corporations, we tend to forget about smaller companies, especially local ones, and thinking that since they are from our country, they should know how to survive themselves. And we better create good conditions for foreign investors. Yes, it is very much needed. Foreign investors, definitely they need special treatment and conditions, but the same is needed for SMEs in our countries. And one of the good examples, I think, that or experience that we gained in Russia was in the Republic of Tatarstan. Tatarstan was one of the first regions of Russia where a special economic zone was established, and it is one of the most successful now, attracting billions, and around 50 foreign companies have opened their manufacturing facilities there. And then we were giving grants to support SMEs, the government grants, through leasing, buying equipment, subsidizing some of their interest rates and so on. But then very quickly we realized that even with this support, they can't really move further, because there are actually two major issues when it comes to SMEs. One is even if they have the idea, if they have even certain equipment, they need to have an infrastructure, they need to have premises where they can put in their machines and start their production. And of course, another aspect is financial support. not only grants, subsidies, but also ability to go to commercial banks and to get financing, which is one of the most difficult issues still we don't know how to handle. But when it comes to infrastructure, what we did was very simple. We took the model of special economic zones and we landed it into every municipality. And for example, in Tatarstan, there are 45 municipalities. We got all the heads of municipalities, so districts. We told them, okay, you have certain kind of brown fields. Why don't we turn it into industrial parks? And we, with a special purpose to accommodate small and medium industries. So that regional government plus the federal government could support building up the infrastructure or improving the infrastructure and building the premises. And combined with other financial and, how to call it, other subsidies and support, they could be more successful in doing their activities. Now, we got few industrial parks which were quite successfully started. But then we realized that we need to bring in some of anchor small or medium-sized foreign company so that they can start learning not only how to produce, but also to get this corporate ethics and corporate management experience, which most of the SMEs unfortunately lack. Now, turned out to be quite successful, and in Tatarstan alone, out of 43 municipalities, 10 became very successful with 10, 15, 20 entirely new manufacturing facilities which start functioning, and they are developing further. Now, another issue that SMEs are facing today, even though they have support, they have infrastructure, they don't know how to get into this so-called supply chain. And then in Russia, since it is, has got this past of centralized economic system, many, even entrepreneurs, are still waiting for the government to tell them what to produce and in what volume. And of course, that is market-driven, it should be market-driven activities. And we are trying to build such an environment where foreign investors, when they come, certainly they will create demand for SMEs. And I think this is where the components produced by smaller companies are being supplied to foreigners. And we have the cooperation and at the same time, localization and internationalization at the same time, which we found out to be quite successful. And now we are trying to implement this practice throughout the whole of Russia. And depending on the clusters, depending on the sectors of the economy, trying to link them together so that when we talk about developing new infrastructure for investors, at the same time, we are able to cater for SMEs. And I think this is something that could be done in many of the countries, but still, when it comes to financing of the development of these companies, this is where we have number of issues that need to be solved, and I think we could further discuss it. I see that my time is up. We could further discuss it on how I think it is issue that was many years before and most probably will be even after this, but still how to make SMEs competitive enough so that first of all they capture their own market, and then definitely we want to see them as a champions going to international and global market. And I think these are the challenges that we need to face. But experience that we gained was very fruitful, and we are trying to implement it in every region of Russian Federation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Linar. Anyway, thank you very much for all those valid and very informative presentation. But, and it also has been a welcome move in the recent days that many forums, both international and especially this World Islamic Economic Forum, has been dealing with the plight of the SMEs. It has been a welcome move that globally the attention to the SMEs, which is the backbone of the economy of its nation, is now being attended to. However, majority of these developing nations still are stuck up with the same concern on the inability to compete. You and I will agree with this statement because of many concerns related to financial and structural challenges that are confronted by the SMEs. Now, to continue further, there are some guide questions that I have introduced here, and any of the panelists, the panelists can help in addressing all these questions according to the order of what we're asking here. Now, may I ask Mr. Datuk Radzif, how do you think can SMEs, there are two questions that I would like to pose for you. How can MSMEs strategically position themselves to form alliances with large firms and create more value than they can on their own? And another question is, well, you're free to comment also, my two colleagues there. What are the niches in the supply chain that MSMEs can penetrate? We're talking issues on competitiveness here. Sir.
Thank you, Bobby, for the question. Perhaps I think the issue with regards to how best to fit in the SMEs within the context of making them prevalent within the domestic supply chain, that's the question, right?
Yes.
Essentially is what I think I've stated just now with regards to the vendor development program. And this is actually a program where you have the MNCs as basically the anchor companies. And I think establishing a line of SMEs that can actually support the so-called anchor companies that can actually then fulfill the expectation, the expected needs. But in doing so, it must be through a conscious effort, and this is a structural design in itself, through conscious effort of making sure that the SMEs is actually taking through a journey of building up their capacity and their capability along the same line. Henceforth, to do that, in order to actually ensure that the SMEs themselves have got the capacity to fulfill the expected needs of the MNCs, then there must be the context of advisory services that needs to be provided, R&D to be supported by way of linkages with regards to the universities. At the same time, of course, financial institutions can come in to actually provide the financing to support that whole ecosystem for the SMEs to fulfill the expected needs. So within the context of that whole ecosystem, if you like, it's actually one that can actually support SMEs to ensure that they are sustainable. They can actually support the requirements of the MNCs towards immersing the needs of the local SMEs products and services into the end product of the MNCs themselves. So that's one way. Bobby.
Thank you, Rajit. Can you add on to that, Ms. Roshika, on that question about the strategical position of the SMEs to how to form alliances, as you were mentioning earlier to me during our discussion?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to recognize that they're not a homogeneous group, SMEs. There are different sectors, different stages of the life cycle, and as a result, they'll have different needs, whether it's different financing needs, different marketing needs. And I think it's important to not look at just a blanket solution for SMEs and really look at the subsegments of where they work and understand that. I think it is about helping them link better. In my former life, I worked on a business linkage challenge fund with DFID and Deloitte, where we worked with some farmers, some SMEs in Belize actually, who were making chocolate, growing local produce and making chocolate for the local market. And it was just something so simple that we helped them get a fair trade certification and help them get the certification saying that they were organic. And suddenly they could sell at a premium in a local as well as an international market. It was that straightforward. And they grew to be called, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Green and Black's chocolate, and actually Cadbury's ended up buying them. So it was a hugely successful initiative by just simple sort of business and marketing help at one nascent point of working with SMEs along the chain.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I add
Thank you.
something?
Anyway, yeah, you may add, Linar.
Yeah, you see, I very much agree with the idea that it depends on the sectors of the economy. Some of the sectors, they've been there for ages. Some of the sectors are just coming. And among the new sectors, for example, we have halal industry. And if you look at the landscape of halal industry in Russian Federation, then that will be most of the time small and medium companies. And they have very brave idea that they can come into the new market, start producing halal products, and this is where they end, you know. And the moment they start producing, then they don't know what to do. They don't, again, the supply chain is not there at all. I mean, when we talk about production, growing the raw materials, processing, and then, how to call it, storaging it, distributing it, marketing, packaging, and so on. This is where industry needs, of course, a lot of new, approach whereby each of these segments need to be developed as a part of the system. And unfortunately, most of the time we're stuck in with some idea, and this is what we were discussing with our friends just before the session, that in halal industry, for example, we stuck with the idea of standardization of whether it is in compliance or not, and we are so much into this, and we completely forgot that one of the major issues today is we have Islamic bankings by themselves, and then we have halal industry by themselves, and for last 2 years, in major international events, people were trying to bring up this issue, but still we don't know where the linkage and where's the breach. And I think this is where forums like this also should address it in a way that we should come up with a proper strategy of developing the whole industry, and whereby the players, SMEs, they exactly know what is their role and what is their obligations and what they can hope from the industry and from the government side as well. And which means sector focus is very much needed in order to understand how integrated to the supply chain that or another company.
Correct. It is for this purpose that this conference, the Islamic Economic Forum, has to be able to introduce resolutions in order to put in order the proper compliance with standards as far as certifications are concerned when you talk of halal certification. So this is also one instance of hindrance to competitiveness of its nation. We have the inadequate capacity for certification that is harmonized among the global standards. So there are many hindrances of competitiveness outside the side of gaining access to financing. And it is for these reasons that we're talking about regulatory hindrances that need to be addressed in order for MSMEs to reach their full potential. We appreciate and we admire the projects that you have introduced in your locality when you say the establishment of an eco-zone on each municipality. But in that context, how can the question is, how can the SME participants in that eco-zone, municipal eco-zone, engage global business players to be effectively utilized in the linkages and to have broader partnerships for their development outside their eco-zone? Linar.
You know, we were studying the experience of Germany, for example. If you look at the leading German companies, which are quite huge in size, not necessarily you will find them in Munich or Berlin or in big cities. Most of the time they will be located in small villages. There's a village for, let's say, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people, and there will be one huge manufacturing facility, and local SMEs basically will be supporting this, and by creating a circle around this entity. And basically an idea when we started creating industrial zones or industrial parks of municipality level, was that we bring to each municipality one foreign investor, and we built around it local SMEs, so that they somehow or other they get involved into this supply chain, and they become the part of this greater activities. And I think this is it works. Not all the time, but most of the cases it does.
I think if I may
Okay.
add to that,
Okay,
Robbie,
Datuk.
I think what Lina has stated just now is very much based on what we call a geographical context with regards to where SMEs are located vis-a-vis that of where MNCs want their business to be localized. But let me quote an example of Malaysia's experience on this. We're talking about Petronas, is a good example. Petronas has got its own vendor development program. And I think they took this on way back in 1994. And the intent is basically trying to build up the capabilities of the so-called local entrepreneurs within the oil and gas sector. I think what they've achieved at the end of the day is basically and the end goal is basically to look at import substitution.
True.
So henceforth, I think what it ended up with is basically a lot of local components has been absorbed within the context of what Petronas is trying to do. So I think that is actually this whole context of localization that I think we're talking about.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Datuk.
if I may add, for example, like if you look at Russian economy now, of course we are under so-called sanctions of America and Europe, and everybody thought that it's going to be a disaster, but in fact, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because at the end of the day, it was one of the greatest pushes for import substitution. And those small industrial parks that we were creating were just right on time when the government was coming up with new initiatives on substituting or import substitution of different types of products. And today, we see that the whole transformation going on in the economy, but most important thing, infrastructure is there already in place. And I think when we talk about vendor programs, it's not only Petronas, and by the way, even our smaller companies, we are trying to put into the vendor program of Petronas now, the companies from Russia, especially the servicing companies or suppliers of certain very niche market components. But at the same time, in our country also, like for example, in Russia, only contribution of SMEs currently only 25% of GDP, and 75% comes from larger corporations. So another challenge to the government was that how to link existing large corporations with the SMEs, and this is where vendor programs are being introduced in most of the bigger companies now.
Thank you. Now, going back, well, part of the development of the SMEs are of different sectors. There are many. Most of the economies also within the ASEAN and outside the ASEAN region are dependent on agriculture as their key to the development of their economy. Now, talking of the agribusiness sector, where a huge segment are also SMEs, correct? Now, for instance, in the case of India, for example, it's highly dependent on the agribusiness sector. It has been highly encouraged in the past because of the aging farmer component, that implementation of agri-mechanization be in place. Anybody of you may answer after my question to Roshika, no? About how does the agribusiness mechanization progress in the different economies that may relate to development and sustainable increase of economic growth of the SMEs?
It's a very interesting and important question. I think we still have challenges in India, and I think many people have seen in the media, we have suicides from farmers and so forth, and it's still a key area that needs a lot of work in. But when we look at mechanization, there is a lot of opportunity that comes with bringing technology and using technology. And making systems more efficient. I think there is a need for it, but we recognize that when doing so, even when there are government programs that are sharing this sort of information, we do need to bundle it with some sort of support that includes some financial support as well as ongoing hand-holding through the process. It's not enough to just introduce something new and hope that it works. And we realize that with opportunities, that if it's not done in a systematic way with a variety of players providing that support in these communities in the agribusiness section, it doesn't continue the way it should. Many inputs are often required, and there's a cost associated with that small agribusinesses are simply not able to provide for. So I think it still remains a challenging area when we look at it in the context of India.
Thank you. Linar.
For last 10, 15 years, we tried different ways of handling the development of agricultural, of agri-industry in Russia. Some of the regions, they believed that it will be much more efficient if bigger companies will come and they take most of the fields and the economics of scales and things like that will make it more efficient. But after 10 years, we saw that actually it doesn't work that way. Yeah. I mean, 90% of subsidies were going to these bigger corporations. But when we put on the scale, it came up to be that the SMEs or farmers, which were getting just 10% of subsidies, in fact, they were producing 50% of agricultural output, whereby 90% of subsidies were going to larger corporations, and still they are producing only 50%. So I think, and after that, government realized that it's much better to create equal kind of, to give equal kind of treatment when it comes to the excess of subsidies, to the subsidies and other forms of support. And then we came up with the government programs where we start helping farmers to build, facilities to supply them equipment and so on, because somehow in agri-industry, the big numbers not play, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is an efficient way. So we saw it from the practice, and then some of the regions, they never tried to go for bigger corporations. They kept it every farmer, for example, was having like 30, 40,000 hectare only, which is a very small piece of land for Russia, where we have millions and millions of hectares of land. So some of the bigger corporations were having few millions of hectares, but still those regions where they managed to keep it on the smaller scale turn out to be more efficient. And this is where higher quality, more personal approach is being monitored, and we see that it works of having that kind of approach as well.
Yeah, it's the reason why I introduced that question about the agribusiness sector, is in order to be able to complete the cycle of improvement on the SMEs localization. Agribusiness, it plays a very important role in developing the agribusiness sector. Unfortunately, productivity has something to do with available farmhands and efficient farmhands. But in recent developments, because of aging farmers, efficiency on the farm levels has declined. So the mandatory need of introducing mechanization. And among us in the ASEAN region, most of the countries in the ASEAN region are below par as far as agribusiness mechanization is concerned. And this is one item of the development that has to be looked upon as part of SMEs' global competitiveness, both international and the local scenario. And Datuk, can you add something into this about agribusiness mechanization in the context of what they do here in Malaysia and other ASEAN experiences?
I think what I can add to that is merely the fact that I think it sort of underlines and underwrites the point that productivity is all related to innovation. I mean, I mean, for SMEs to move up the value chain, I mean, this context of innovation is something that needs to be absorbed and to be adopted, regardless of whether you are in the line of a agribusiness or other businesses. And I think to fulfill the expected needs of the global market via way of localization, definitely you need to be able to actually innovate and to actually ensure that there's actually value-added components or parts that you can actually provide to, so that at least it can be taken in by the likes of larger corporations and even the likes of MNCs. So that's where the competitive advantage is. And I think going back to the context of agribusinesses, definitely, you know, with the context of in Malaysia itself, I think we have been challenged too with regards to the lack of human resources that wants to go into the agribusinesses. So mechanization is one way of actually increasing the level of productivity of the agribusinesses.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we would like to open. We have, in the interest of time, we have a few minutes left. So if there are any other questions relevant to the discussions earlier, we will entertain about three questions from the floor. And you may direct your questions to whoever in the panel. Thank you very much.
Name where you're from and your question.
Thank you, Frida. Noran Abdullah from Australia. My question is for Linar. Linar, you mentioned in your presentation that about 10 of the areas were very successful. What made them more successful? Was it the infrastructure or the human capital that was there or the capital that was available?
They actually, answer is very simple. Those municipalities were very much successful where the head of municipality himself was so much involved in promoting and attracting and creating necessary conditions, or so-called ecosystem for the small and medium companies to come and start their production facilities there. Of course, infrastructure, human capital, financial support, and some other things are very important. But when it comes to the result, it still depends on the champions, on the leaders, on personalities that are very much involved and pushing it further. That's why I think for our Muslim world, it's very important that we properly develop captains of the business, which could take it to the international market. Basically, in today's world, with all the facilities that we have with internet, you can promote anything. Just depends on your desire and your dedication. That's all. And I think that's the answer.
Thank you.
Is there another question?
Next question, please. There is the microphone. Can you introduce yourself before?
Hello, my name is Khairil. I'm from Malaysia. I have a question for Datuk Radzif. You mentioned about the need of innovation. SMEs need to innovate to be more competitive and to meet the required standards from the MNCs. From a banker point of view, how willing is the banks in funding these new sets of IT requirements or technology drive for the SMEs to fund their project?
I think that's a very pertinent question, I think, given the context of what we're talking about today. Yes, I think in terms of innovation, I think we've got to look is basically the end game. If ultimately, if it actually improves productivity and improves the capacity of the SMEs, I'm sure that I think a lot of financial institutions will come in and step in to provide the necessary capital. I mean, for my bank, personally, I think we have got this financing which talks about automation and innovation. We do provide that kind of financing towards SMEs to move up the value chain. My way specifically of looking at how they can actually innovate, how can they can actually come up with regards to automation to improve the level of productivity and as well as creating that competitive advantage for the end products.
Can I add to that as well? You know, in terms of the work that we do, we're working in Bangladesh as well right now with 4 financial institutions, 3 banks, 1 NBFC, where we're working to develop non-financial services for banks to offer SMEs. And I think we've helped them realize that some of it will be given as a way to bring more customers in to grow their book, but it again makes sense for them to do it and to invest in this. It's not a CSR activity, and I think we're seeing increasingly more financial institutions coming on board and recognizing this is an area that they want to get into. This is not the micro level, this is one level above that, but it is quite an untapped area. They also see that with SMEs, because a lot of entrepreneurs lack a little bit of confidence, of comfort to walk into a bank, that once they have them as customers, they have much deeper relationships, so their cross-sell is much higher. And as we are collecting this information, it makes it easier and easier to talk to the banks in the region, but we are seeing many more banks approach us at IFC to actually help develop these non-financial service offerings for them to give to the market.
Is there another question?
Thank you. Any one or two more questions from the floor, please? Okay, thank you. If there are none, then I guess we can put this forum into closure. And I will just request for a 1 minute closing statement for each of my colleagues here before I put in my final statement. We start from our friend from
The ladies first for the
Roshika.
hard, for the difficult work.
2 minutes, it's
I
okay.
think just essentially, I mean, we all understand the importance of SMEs, and I think as we look at promoting them or supporting them, or even for the entrepreneurs who are building them, I think I was asked earlier today, what is the one biggest issue that you think SMEs face? And I'm reluctant to answer a question like that, because I think there's not one issue. I think it has to be finance, has to be support, has to be business training, access to markets. And I think to think holistically about the ecosystem that we all work in individually to support SMEs and grow them is fundamental.
Thank you.
Well, for
Linar?
me, when it comes to SME and the success of those small and medium companies, I think it is still about entrepreneurship spirit. Unfortunately, in most of the countries, those youngsters who really would like to become an entrepreneur, it's not big number. And I think this is where, as our governments, we should look, and as our industries, we should look at how to make it something that youngsters would like to be involved in, and then they would like to be successful examples of such things. And the promotion of successful small and medium entrepreneurs, the captains of businesses, which have got potential to grow and become global players. This is the perception of the society that I think is very important, to make people to believe that they can do it, and they can really come up with entirely new and innovative and demanded products to the international market. And being local, thinking international, and being successful, and very much welcomed and saluted kind of concept of entrepreneur. I think this is where the entrepreneurship spirit has to be developed, and we have to be part of this development. Thanks.
Thank you. And Datuk?
I guess I'd like to end with a challenge, perhaps to some of the local SMEs that's probably present here this evening. We are at the cornerstone of a globalization, in a sense, with the ASEAN Economic Community coming in 2016. We have TPPA coming, and that's knocking on our doors. This advent in regards to globalization is going to come regardless of whatever has been done, has been said. So the challenge is basically, how do we best build up our capacity, I think, to be able to fulfill that so-called gap within the global market. And I think local SMEs, from my perspective, have got that capacity and the capability. We have to start knocking on the doors of the MNCs that's actually available here, because, as you know, Malaysia attracts a huge sum of foreign direct investment every year. So let's really capitalize on the foreign direct investment that comes in here, work with the MNCs, build up your capacity along the so-called domestic supply chain, build up the capacity, and hopefully, it works and opens the doors towards a greater possibility of globalizing your products and your services overseas. So I think if I can end with that, I think that's probably the challenge.
Thank you very much. So I would like to thank our three presenters, Mr. Radzif, Datuk, Mr. Linar, and Ms. Roshika Singh for this very informative and productive afternoon related to the SME's gateway to localization. Now, in summary, localization prior to internationalization, which was discussed in the whole afternoon, whole day, morning and afternoon of today, in my observation, the resolutions that can come up, that the entire body may come up, will be a general resolution for the entire body adopting maybe a harmonized system of integrating all these discussions in order to arrive at a resolution with regards to specific concerns of the SMEs in order to put them on another level as far as developing them into a competitive industry. Maybe we'll be talking about the real sense access to financing, capacity building, and harmonized regulatory system, and of course, those nations that are agribusiness related, it's improvement of the farm level as far as agri-mechanization is concerned. On that note, I would like to thank our guests and our people in the floor for spending time with us in this last segment of the SME on Gateway to Localization. Thank you very much and good afternoon to all of you.